Hey everybody, it's Fun here once again. Hope you're doing well. Today is more rambling about the Infinite Digits Toadstool Tech Ectocore. Today's intro jam is actually going to be provided by Calderwood. I really liked what they posted, and I just asked if I could use it for this video because I thought it was really sweet, and it would be fun to. You're going to hear my little loop for probably most of this video, so we're going to start off with something actually good, and this jam is, so it sounds like this. Okay, disclaimers have moved to the description below for all of these videos going forward, but here's some context for this one. I've shot this 3 times now, this being the fourth. The situation is constantly changing. By the time you're watching this, things have changed, surely. More updates have probably been released. Maybe there's an open source version of the firmware that's changed everything that is circulating that, I don't know. Anyway, just to say that, like, this is shot the morning before I go to work on March 4th, 2025. That is the context in which I'm talking right now. If things have changed, which they surely will, keep that in mind. In this video, I want to tell my story about my panic surrounding the time when they announced the final batch. And up front, I just want to be clear that Ectocore is by no means abandoned. There's lots to talk about. I have fears about it being abandoned, but at the time of writing or rewriting it for the fourth time, they've done nothing but reaffirm their commitment to supporting it, and they offer refunds repeatedly to anyone who wants them. And we even got the clock sync patch that in my opinion, it's so desperately needed. So, but I am gonna express my fears and tell that story as it happened. But I need to make this video now because I get constant questions from owners about syncing it, about which of the 6 firmwares to use, how to use the editor, how to run the updates and stuff, and then from people who are watching my first Rambling About episode on the Ectocore, asking if it's worth getting, if it is discontinued. So I just want to present the current state. So there's more out there on my front than just the first episode where I sing its praises and don't talk about any of the things that are going on with it at the moment. So they made it very clear in the Discord when I was talking with them that it's a 2-person personal project. They're both part-time. They implied, and this is my reading into it, that they're not making any money off of it in the Mod Wiggler post announcing its discontinuation, or whatever they call the ending of its production, because they don't consider stopping its production to be a discontinuation, because that's how I phrased it and they were frustrated about that. I just want to say, to quote them, Ectocore is supposed to be fun, but to me, it's a $615 module, and let's get into it and talk about it. So here's the backstory again. I covered all of this in the first episode, but here we'll just go over it quick again. I saw Ectocore a year or 2 ago in those videos you probably watched before coming here. I had never experienced gas like that in my life. I love breakcore. I want that in my system. I want infinitely variable breaks at the twist of a knob. Here, let's... Ectocore provides that finally. We'll get into that in a moment. But I straight up begged the team of Infinite Digits and Toadstool Tech if I could borrow it for an episode. They declined, but the gas was overwhelming. I pre-ordered it from Nightlife Electronics, who is our local dealer here in Vancouver. This was before there was direct sales, but not that I would have gone that route necessarily anyway. It's the same price, at least in Canada, but that's the only option at the time. Okay, I'll just say up front, I paid $679.84 in Canadian after tax for my Ectocore. I refer to the module as being a $700 module a few times in the Discord, and probably in this video I will too. It is a little short of that, right? And that is after tax, so just keep that in mind. I'm trying to be like as upfront about everything in here. The new price has since increased to $615 at the time of writing, so it's gone up a hair as well. Just to say that it is slightly exaggerating to call it a $700 module, and that is Canadian dollars, obviously, because I am Canadian. Ectocore arrived a few months later at Nightlife. Sorry, this might be a little too distracting even for me. Ectocore arrived a few months later at Nightlife. I picked it up. I couldn't get external clock to sync with it, which was presumably how the majority of people will use it, although I later asked the Discord if anyone had used it unclocked, and Infinite Digits themselves said they did, so I wonder if that is the source of a lot of the headaches around the external clocking, is that the developers didn't use it themselves or see a need for it, but everyone I spoke to said that they did, so that includes me, so sorry. Now, I thought this was something that would be patched shortly. Nightlife was one of the first places to get it. Like I saw online that lots of people were waiting for their Perfect Circuit ones, or they were, I'm not sure if Perfect Circuit was actually the dealer, but lots of people were like eager to get theirs and they weren't out yet. I figured it would be patched shortly. It was one of the first places to get it. I did an episode on it that you may have seen where I used it as a master clock to drive the rest of my system, and that worked. I love this thing. I still do. I loved when it got in sync with the rest of my drum voices, but I wouldn't use it as my only drum voice. You need other stuff in sync with it, right? But I looked forward to getting it synced up with my actual sequencers, because that's how I would use it, right? So it sat for a couple days. I noodled with it sometimes. It always had to be the master clock, because even putting phase offset on PAMs to try and like bring the clock up ahead of it to force it to be back in sync, it was hit or miss if you could do that, but if you wanted to change samples, that would just completely change as well. My fiance and I did a separate video on it, if you saw that. When it worked, I loved it, but not being clockable is like not something I can use in my setup. So a YouTube commenter on my Rambling About episode shared the Toadstool Tech Discord that the commenter shared. Again, there's two companies that make this, or this is created by, but the Toadstool Tech Discord is the one that the commenter shared. Most of what was going on in there at the time was people frustrated with not getting their Ectocores, because I guess there was delays with either the American or UK dealers, but I don't think that is the case anymore. At least I never faced any of that anyway. So there was some stories, and there still are some, about freezing and hardware issues, but I want to say that mine has never frozen on that front. I haven't faced any of that, so that I'll talk about that a little bit, about why there's different versions of the firmware and stuff, hopefully, but I haven't had any of that so far. I've been lucky. I raised my syncing issue with the support channel there, and disclosure, I'm not really clear on the company partnership between the two. I understand Zach from Infinite Digits is the dev, and Isaac Toadstool Tech is the designer, but this is the Toadstool Tech Discord again, and as far as I know, there's no Infinite Digits Discord, but Isaac doesn't provide dev support in the threads there. It's only Zach responding, so both were responsive and helpful in the support channel. They came to the conclusion, though, that the factory samples on the Ectocore that it's shipped with aren't set up correctly, though, and I want to point out how bizarre that is, to ship a module with banks that aren't set up correctly. And at the time, and this has kind of changed since I wrote the script, forgive me, but I wanted to point out that the assignment of samples is so tricky that even the manufacturer couldn't fill it out to ship it with ones that worked. However, there was a latency issue. It just straight up was a latency issue. I'm sorry. I try to be like pragmatic about they don't really feel it's an issue, or but we'll get into it. There was a latency issue, and they, at this point in the story, they feel that it's the Ectocore, or that you should use different samples than the default ones, because the default ones had issues. So in my original version of the script, I said that the assignment of the samples is so tricky that even the manufacturer couldn't ship it with the line ones. But the issue was with the latency. It wasn't with the samples itself, I don't think. Now, this is a reoccurring problem that seems like the samples are the ones to blame, less the hardware. When it comes to the sync issues, later on I found that the stock ones worked out fine, like I just said, but we'll get into that. So at their suggestion, I just loaded up 16 new aim and break files I had on my file. I went into the web editor at ectocore.rocks and I just uploaded all 16 to one new bank on my SD card and dropped them in. Now, in retrospect, this seems hilariously naive because there is a lot that goes into preparing your samples for use with the Ectocore. Remember, I just dropped them in and uploaded them. You have to, the team pointed out issues very quickly with my files. Remember, I just dropped them in. There's a lot that actually goes into making them work. I didn't have time then to troubleshoot it and stuff. I thought that the Ectocore just kind of like took a loop and mangled it for you, but you really need to prep them a lot in the editor. So anyway, I didn't have time to correct them or troubleshoot them at the time. At the time, was trying to pump out a video every day and preparing for a recording time that just passed on Sunday. So anyway, all the while, I'm getting comments on the Rambling About episode, emails, Instagram messages, etc., all about getting the clock sync working. And I thought, well, hey, at least I'm not the only one, but I mentioned the factory samples aren't right and directed users to their Discord. And again, I'm filled with stress about it at this point, honestly, because, and lots of my friends have said that I shouldn't be, but when someone like Daniel, who's probably watching this right now, DMs me and says, hey, Tafony, I bought an Ectocore after watching your video, and I can't get the external clock sync. How do you get it to sync? I feel like I'm having a heart attack, to be totally honest, and full transparency. Like, if my rug pull fears start to creep up here, and I'm terrified that others are going to blame my video for their getting involved in it. So, about my rug pull fears. So, I want to say again, for the record, I still have anxiety about its support going forward, but this is by no means abandoned. There was a patch yesterday, there's a patch the day before, there's patches every day. They continue to work on it, but then on March 1st, someone commented on my video, they said, can't believe this is already being discontinued, and then a crying face. So here's my internal thoughts at the time. I couldn't believe it was being abandoned. I'm not being hyperbolic. I had an actual panic attack thinking about my Rambling About episode where I sung its praises. What if I caused people to run out and get it just to have development abandoned before the sync issue was fixed or even a manual was released? And then I'm also thinking I spent almost $700 on this thing. The Syntact I had to sell to cover it. It's 2 days before I was trying to take it into the studio as well. And my return window is constantly approaching, which now is even less than a week away. But sure enough, if you go to the Infinite Digits Instagram, there's a post. It says, last batch of Ectocores, get one at ectocore.com. Like, what? It's already being abandoned? One sentence? So I rushed to that Discord I hadn't frequented for a bit to try and find out more. Does anyone have that discontinuation announcement? I read a bunch of comments about it online, but I couldn't find anything other than the final batch post on Instagram. Isaac, which is Toadstool Tech, said, yeah, unfortunately the next batch is in limbo at the moment. It's not guaranteed there will be another batch, but it's unlikely right now, or at least won't be for a while. Well, that's kind of different from it discontinuing, but anyway, we went back and forth, and I'm hesitant to post screen grabs here without everyone's consent. Not that there's like anything super heated or anything. It's just like, random people talking in that Discord probably don't need to end up in my stupid YouTube video. So I'll just point out that the Discord is public. Do join the Toadstool Tech Discord if you want to read into it. But on that day, patch 6.3.0 was released, and I've seen everything blamed for the external clock sync issues since, and lots of people blamed the lack of reset. And 6.3.0 was supposed to bring in the ability to reassign any of the other CV inputs to reset. But after that came out, that didn't work. Something happened in that firmware that you couldn't reassign it. Like, you just select it in the settings, push the firmware, push your settings to the SD card, and it didn't work. And to be honest, that is a small mistake under normal circumstances. Like, I make small mistakes all the time at work, in life. I make large ones constantly too at work, in life. But given all my fears and the panic attack I'm having, I thought they were just abandoning it, like in that moment. Like, I just thought it was over for the Ectocore, right? Like, they're discontinuing it, have this broken patch, and goodbye. And I'll be blunt as I was at the time. Again, I've said it 500 times for this video. They continue to work on it. It's not abandoned, but I'll be as blunt as I was at the time. This is a pretty crazy situation to be in for a module that we paid $700 for, nearly $700 for, right? And they have been clear about being tiny, two-person only part-time thing. And I completely understand, but I am still straight up afraid they're going to abandon the buyers. Like, the dev has only rejoined the Discord that weekend, and I'm not sure if they crashed out before or what, because I talked to them previously that first round, but they only rejoined recently. But anyway, the people in there were people in the Discord were then pointing to a post on Mod Wiggler, and I'm just going to quote from it. Hopefully, I'll put it up on the screen right now. Apparently, this will be the first and final batch, is what one of the commenters said. Infinite Digit says, yes, likely so that I'm not doing more Ectocore batches, even though Infinite Digits is, quote, a company. It's solely a company so that I can share things I make with the world. I can't share things for free because they cost me money. Since I'm selling things, I have to report to the government, hence the company. Ectocore is not my livelihood. It's just a very personal musical object I needed to create for my own purposes that I wanted to share. I love that people have incorporated into their music practice, but it doesn't make sense for me to support more after these, so it's unlikely there will be other batches. So again, I am very concerned about that, even recording this video. But that is where I pointed to earlier in the video that I'm the implication that they don't make any money from it. Someone else said, the firmware is open source, at least in case there are still bugs after it's out of support. The Eurorack incarnation being abandoned. So Infinite Digits replied to that saying, to clear up this misunderstanding, I will always support the devices that I sold to someone. If someone has got something from me, I want it to work for as long as possible. I'm not abandoning Ectocores that I sold, and the Ectocores I sold are not going, quote unquote, out of support. However, if it happens that someone clones the Ectocore and uses my code and starts selling them, that would not be something I support. And to this, I just say, yikes. This, like, rereading it even now, it really feels like a rug pull, for lack of a better term. But at least Zach is reaffirming their commitment to the module. And then they have repeatedly, right? And I'll interject here as well, like, they don't want to take support requests anymore. This is something they mentioned in the Mod Wiggler thread, that they don't want them in Discord. They don't want them in Mod Wiggler. They just want you to email them. They did come back to the Toadstool Tech Discord. I was talking to them in there yesterday. But at least at time of writing, you're supposed to email them, and maybe I'll leave that in the description. I don't know. But that's the route they want to take. I will say, in my opinion, making the support issues public would benefit both the community and the developer, in my opinion. Example, everyone had issues with external sync. Why not make all of that support available to everybody? Then you don't get the same questions again and again. But I think that's some source of where they're getting frustrated and bogged down. But again, it's not my place to tell them how to run it. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents. So anyhow, I should probably keep my frustrations inside so I didn't need to worry about the response. But the more I thought about it, the more I feel like the buyers are in a pretty scary position where we have to kind of, like, not grovel, but like we gotta try and really walk on eggshells with the developer in hopes that they will continue to support it, that we're afraid to push the envelope to have it fixed because we fear that they're going to abandon it completely. And even saying that now, it fills me with resentment to feel that way. And I don't think I was rude to them, or I think I am still being very tactful, but I need to express the fears and concerns we have, even if that makes them feel defensive and frustrated about it. I pointed out in the Discord that this was a $700 module, and this situation was crazy, and I still feel it's crazy that we're in this. And they offered to do a refund. No mention of its support going forward. I pointed out that I bought it from a retailer, and Zach offered to buy it back directly if they aren't willing to do a return. I know they're discontinued and in high demand, and there's no supply, so they could probably resell it or what have you. But I'll just point out in the Discord, this happens a lot. Just people raise things, and then refunds are offered, and like we want to see this thing work. I don't, you know what I mean? I believe in the Ectocore. I believe in the project, right? It's a nice safety net. I really don't doubt their commitment to this anymore, but I think that speaks to the antagonism towards the community that like people ask for support and then just send it back. I don't want to deal with it. Anyway, so response I got from them asking about, because I was looking for stuff, asking about its discontinuation and stuff, right? And I'll say it again, as I said before, they don't feel it's a discontinuation. They said in response to me, as for the quote discontinuation slash quote going silent slash quote it's abandoned completely comments, I do not appreciate them. It's not the truth. I don't know where these rumors keep coming from. If it's the stores, it's incredibly disappointing. The stores don't share their communications with me. As long as I've made devices, I have always supported every device I sell, and I don't really care how long someone has it. I don't want my devices to end up in the trash. If there's a way I can salvage or fix them to troubleshoot them, I always have and plan to always do. To which I said, to be specific, announcing the current batch would be the last, with no other context other than a reply I received from Isaac, followed by the latest firmware for clock reset not working. And again, they just offered to do a return. But I like, even now, I'm just wondering, why not say something on social media, on the website, on the anywhere? Just give us something. Just say, this is why we feel the open source is going to be cloned, and we don't think we're going to make any more, but we still will continue to make this work. Give us anything. Granted, there is the Mod Wiggler post, but again, I had to go to the Discord and ask, and even the Mod Wiggler post is just response to someone's comments on there, right? And to be blunt again, when a module gets discontinued before the manual is even completed, that is like an extremely worrying situation to me. And to imply that the community is like spreading rumors about the manufacturer to be afraid of that situation, like what? Like I feel frustrated by the implication that the community is being unreasonable with the devs, like wanting the module to sync externally. And when people post demos of it, and the sync being off, they don't hear it. And to be honest, I think the more we looked at it, I think the developers genuinely didn't hear it. I don't really get how, but I think they genuinely just didn't hear external sync issues. But people in my email did. People in my DMs sure did. Me trying to sync this thing up. But Isaac replied to my reply on that one and said, well, issues are being worked on actively and will be fixed. Not really much more I can say than that. Which again, no one could give us any confidence that the clock issues would be fixed, and they did fix them yesterday. But the team, I didn't have any confidence that the team isn't just going to rely on the open source project to be taken over by those of us holding the bag on the hardware, rather than reaffirming their commitment to the module. They just expressed resentment to me, to the community, for raising our concerns. So I emailed Nightlife and asked them for their 2 cents on the situation. I asked them if they'd take a refund, and they didn't chime in. They only offered an exchange for store credit, which I believe is a policy because I pre-ordered it. And in a separate thread, not response to me, Infinite Digit said, quote, after coming to this Discord, I always need a long break from Ectocore, sad face. And I'll say it again, I feel like the buyers are in a bad position where we have to grovel to the developers in hopes that the module will continue to be supported, which fills me with resentment even now. Like, implication that people needing support for the modules is unreasonable. I think that is just unreasonable, and everyone had issues with the external clock. Speaking to a friend and fellow owner of an Ectocore on Discord again, only once the low latency firmware was shared had we ever seen a video of someone externally clocking it. Anyway, I'm sorry for the downer video. I just say it again, like I said to them in Discord, that when Ectocore works, it's excellent. I had lots of people say to me when I'm venting about the situation, like, why would I want Ectocore? What, like $600? Why wouldn't I get a Morphogene? And I love this idea. I think this is, I want to see it happen. I want to see, it's an awesome project. We all bought into it thinking it's great. I still think it's a great idea. And with this low latency patch, it realizes the dream that we all had. I'm not trying to be like super heady about it or whatever, but like it's awesome. And with the patch that was released yesterday, or the 6 versions of it, it realizes that. So let's hear it. Now, I'm still running not the beta, but the test firmware that they provided fixes with. But it clocks. We finally have clock. And this isn't a very interesting bank, but this is usable. And it's not perfect either, but it's... Breaks are scattered, right? The idea is worth pursuing, is what I was trying to say. So, with all that being said, because there's no manual, and an external clock firmware was finally released yesterday, here's how you can get your Ectocore working with an external source as of March 3rd, 2025. Update the Ectocore firmware to one of the 6.34 firmwares with low latency. I'll be honest, I asked them which firmware I should use, and they said IDK. I asked what benefit a high latency firmware would have. I didn't get a response, but my understanding is it leaves room for effects to work with the hardware. But here we go. I would take just... I know there's some people who had issues with crashes. That wasn't me. I've never had issues with the crashes. Go and get either the overclocked or non-overclocked ultra low latency to start probably. And then if you do find you have some issues with it, maybe go for the somewhat low latency. Again, I don't really understand that part of things, but here's the procedure to update it. So it requires case power and USB connection to your computer. Turn it on. On the back, there's a boot and reset button side by side. Hold the right and press the left button. It'll be in update mode as indicated by the solid white lights. Raspberry Pi will show up on your computer. Drop the UTF-2 file for your firmware on it. It'll just eject itself and reboot once it's completed. Now, in an earlier version of the script, they said the sample timings need to be exact, and I detailed how you need to trim them to perfect divisions in the DAW. However, since this update, even the banks that they say they're not perfect, but even the banks that they say are off aren't like completely off. Like, these banks are fine, I think. So, again, I included something in the script. I included something in the script last time about how these sample timings need to be perfectly tight to work, but I don't think that was the issue, and I don't think they necessarily need to be exact for use, at least in this. But I will say, to quote them on that front, it said the sample timings are not tight with a whole number of beats. Basically said Ectocore will put out what you put in, which, yes, but that is fine when you have the latency lined up. So their example is you put a source BPM of 172 BPM. The closest beats would be 6.977 seconds at 172 BPM. So yeah, it's not off a lot. It's not off by a lot, but that matters, they say. So put it, I don't have a DAW, but put it into a DAW and make sure it's trimmed perfectly if you want it. In an earlier version of the script, I suggested using the Ectocore samples and overriding the defaults because they confirmed those to be set up correctly. Use that as a test if you can, or if you're trying to rule out samples as an issue and just look at the low latency. But again, I'm using the samples, you'll hear them right now, that have issues. And yeah, they're not perfectly aligned, but like, I'm fairly forgiving to a lot of slop, just not like how it was before, if that makes sense. Like, it can't sound completely out of sync, right? So, do you need them perfect? I don't necessarily think so. I think you need the new update. Like, even this melody, that this is supposed to be a broken sample, and it sounds in sync to me. So yeah, use Ectocore to rule out sample issues as a test, because that was pointed to a lot in the Discord. So I was going to end this video with me talking about my decision to return the Ectocore, but here we are on the 4th edit of it, and finally we have a patch that fixes the clock issues. I'm going to keep mine, and as the month return window of mine inches closer, and I believe that's like within the week, I believe in Ectocore, and I believe in the dev, or at least the community's ability to make Eurorack breakcore dreams a reality. Here's hoping we don't get burnt by that trust, but I think we are at a point now where we always say don't buy something based on what it's promised to be, only buy something on what it is. And I think we are at a point where it's externally clockable. And working, right? There's no manual, but I think we're at a point where it's usable. Here's my copyright strike. All right. I'm Tafony. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. I believe in you and your Ectocore. I'll talk to you soon.